At 2:47 p.m. on September 14, 1943, Staff Sergeant Thomas Caldwell watched a German Ju-88 bomber descend toward his anti-aircraft position outside Salerno, Italy, knowing his gun crew had maybe 8 seconds before it dropped its payload on the beachhead below. 34 years old, former ironworker from Pittsburgh, 7 months operating Bofors 40mm anti-aircraft guns, 0 confirmed kills. The Ju-88 was at 2,000 yards in closing. Standard attack profile. Level approach at 3,000 feet. The bomber would release at 1,000 yards. 8 seconds at current speed, maybe less. Caldwell's gun crew was ready. Corporal James Rivera sat in the gunner's seat. Private Danny Kowalski stood at the loader position. Private First Class Eugene Martinez tracked the aircraft through range-finding optics. 800 rounds of 40mm ammunition stacked beside the gun. Everything prepared, according to manual specifications. The problem wasn't readiness. The problem was the gun couldn't hit anything. The Bofors 40mm was mechanically sound. Swedish design adopted by Allied forces in 1937. 40mm high explosive rounds. 120 rounds per minute rate of fire. Effective range 3,000 yards. Reliable feed mechanism. The gun itself worked perfectly, but the mounting system was wrong. Standard Bofors mount was cruciform base bolted to concrete platform. 4 steel arms extending from central hub. Gun attached at center point. Simple design. Regulation equipment. Approved by Army Ordnance Department, and completely inadequate. The mount transferred every ounce of recoil directly into the gun's elevation mechanism. Each shot created vibration that destabilized the next shot. At sustained fire rates, the oscillation was severe enough to throw aim off by 3 to 5 degrees. 3 degrees at 2,000 yards meant missing a Stuka by 200 feet. Caldwell had done the math. He'd worked Pittsburgh steel mills for 12 years before the war. Understood load distribution, stress points, vibration dampening. The numbers told the story clearly. By September 1943, Allied anti-aircraft batteries at Salerno had fired 47,000 rounds at German aircraft. They'd achieved 23 confirmed kills. Hit rate, 0.048%. Less than 1 hit per 1,000 rounds fired. The Luftwaffe had learned. German pilots flew lower, slower, more aggressively. They knew American gunners couldn't track them accurately. They knew the guns were wasting ammunition on empty sky. Caldwell had watched it happen too many times. August 23rd, an FW-190 strafing run against supply trucks. Caldwell's crew fired 80-round burst. Tracers arced through the air 200 feet behind the target. The German pilot waggled his wings, taunting them, banked away untouched. August 27th. 3 Stukas attacking ammunition depot. All 4 Bofors positions engaged, 400 rounds total fired. 0 hits. The Stukas destroyed the depot. Caldwell watched secondary explosions light the afternoon sky. Watched Allied supplies burn because his gun couldn't hit what he aimed at. September 3rd, Me-110 at 1,800 yards. Perfect setup. Clear sky, steady approach, textbook engagement conditions. Caldwell's crew fired disciplined 3-round bursts exactly as the manual required. Every burst missed. Rivera felt it, felt the gun shake under his hands, felt each shot destabilize the platform. By the 3rd round in any burst, he was firing blind, just pointing at where the aircraft used to be and hoping. The Me-110 escaped undamaged. The training manual said the problem was crew discipline. Fire shorter bursts, maintain proper elevation tracking, conserve ammunition for multiple engagements. Caldwell knew better. He'd watched the same pattern repeat for 7 months. First round in any burst was relatively accurate. Second round, less accurate. Third round wild. By the fifth round, pure chance. The problem wasn't the crew. The problem was physics. The gun's recoil created feedback loop. Each shot transferred energy into the mount. The cruciform base was too narrow to distribute those forces effectively. The vibration accumulated with each successive round. The elevation mechanism couldn't compensate fast enough. By the time the gunner made corrections, he was aiming at where the target had been 3 seconds ago. Not crew error. Mechanical design flaw. Caldwell reported the vibration issue to Lieutenant Marcus Webb in late August. Webb was 26 years old, West Point graduate, battery commander. Good officer. By the book. Webb's response was textbook. Equipment is within specifications, Sergeant. Factory tolerances allow for minor vibration during sustained fire. The problem is crew training. Make sure your gunner fires shorter bursts and maintains proper elevation tracking. Caldwell tried to explain. The mount needed reinforcement, needed wider base to distribute recoil forces, needed structural modification to reduce oscillation. Webb cut him off. Unauthorized modifications void equipment warranty and violate Army Ordnance protocols. Any changes to regulation equipment require engineering approval from Aberdeen Proving Ground. Aberdeen Proving Ground was 4,000 miles away in Maryland. Meanwhile, German aircraft attacked Salerno daily. Caldwell watched 8 more aircraft escape in the next week. Watched tracers miss by margins that shouldn't exist with properly functioning equipment. Watched his crew lose confidence. Rivera stopped making fine adjustments. What was the point? The gun would shake off target anyway. Kowalski loaded ammunition mechanically, stopped tracking whether bursts connected. They never connected. Martinez called ranges with decreasing enthusiasm. His job was identifying targets so the gun could destroy them. But the gun didn't destroy anything. It just made noise and wasted ammunition. They were firing at ghosts. September 12th. Caldwell was walking perimeter, checking defensive positions. Routine inspection. He passed an abandoned farm 200 yards from his gun emplacement. Stone house, collapsed barn, empty livestock pen. He noticed something. Heavy gauge steel fence rails. The kind Italian farmers use to reinforce enclosures against terrain erosion. Pre-war agricultural infrastructure. Built to last. The rails were 8 feet long, 4 inches wide, 1/4-inch steel. Caldwell picked one up. Weight. Approximately 60 pounds. Dense, rigid, engineered for load distribution. He hefted it, felt the balance, looked at the rail, looked back at his Bofors position, saw the solution. The cruciform mount needed wider footprint, needed something to distribute recoil forces across larger area. These fence rails could do it. Weld them to the base, extend outward like stabilizing arms, create lateral reinforcement. Simple engineering. The kind of structural modification he'd done 100 times in Pittsburgh steel mills. Weld additional support members to reduce vibration in industrial machinery. Same principle, different application. The modification would add approximately 200 pounds to the mounting system. Would require welding equipment and 6 hours of work. Would violate at least a dozen Army Ordnance protocols. Would work. Caldwell carried the rail back to his position, set it beside the gun mount, compared dimensions. The rail would extend 3 feet beyond the cruciform base on each side. 4 rails total, 16 weld points. Rivera saw him measuring. "What are you thinking, Sarge?" Caldwell. "Thinking our gun shakes too much. Thinking these rails might stop its shaking." Rivera looked at the rail, looked at the mount, looked at Caldwell. "That's not regulation." "No, it's not. Webb sees this. You're done. Webb won't see it unless it works. And if it doesn't work, Caldwell watched another German fighter cross the sky 2 miles out. Watched standard Bofors positions fire. Watched tracers miss. Then it doesn't matter anyway. That evening, Caldwell requested meeting with Lieutenant Webb, wanted to propose the modification officially. Get approval before implementing unauthorized changes. Webb was in his command tent, reviewing logistics reports. Caldwell: "Sir, request permission to modify gun mount with lateral stabilizers. Should reduce recoil vibration significantly." Webb looked up. "What kind of modification?" "Welding steel fence rails to cruciform base. Creates wider footprint. Distributes forces more effectively." Webb set down his papers. "Sergeant, we've discussed this. Equipment modifications require Aberdeen approval. I can't authorize field changes to regulation equipment." "Sir, the vibration is killing our accuracy. We've fired 800 rounds this week. 0 kills. The problem is technique, not equipment." "Sir, with respect, I've worked industrial machinery for 12 years. The mount is structurally inadequate for sustained fire. It needs reinforcement." Webb stood. "Sergeant Caldwell, I understand your frustration. But I have orders. No unauthorized modifications. If you want to submit formal proposal to Aberdeen, I'll forward it through channels. But I cannot approve field modifications." Caldwell knew what that meant. Formal proposal would take 6 weeks minimum. Probably 12. Maybe never get approved at all. Meanwhile, German aircraft killed Allied soldiers daily. He saluted. "Understood, sir." Walked back to his position. Kowalski was cleaning the gun. "Webb approve it?" "No." "So we're stuck with a gun that can't hit anything?" Caldwell looked at the fence rail beside the mount. Looked at his crew. 3 men who trusted him to keep them alive. 3 men who'd been missing targets for 7 months. "Get some sleep," Caldwell said. "We've got morning watch." At 11:30 p.m., after his crew was asleep, Caldwell went back to the abandoned farm, found 3 more fence rails, carried them back to his position 1 at a time. 4 trips, 200 yards each way. His shoulders ached. He set up portable welding rig, equipment borrowed from engineering depot. No questions asked. The gun position was quiet. Night watch had moved to forward observation post. Nobody around to see what happened next. Caldwell positioned the first rail on the east side of the cruciform base, marked weld points with chalk. 4 connections per rail. Strong structural welds, the kind that wouldn't fail under combat stress. He lit the torch. The arc flared bright. Smell of burning metal filled the air. First weld took 8 minutes. He moved to the second connection point. Same process. His hands were steady. 12 years of mill work made welding automatic. But his mind was racing. If this failed, his crew dies. If Webb found out before combat test, court-martial. If it worked, maybe they could finally hit something. At 3:15 a.m., all 4 fence rails were welded in place. The modification looked crude. 4 steel beams extending from gun mount like spider legs. Nothing like regulation equipment. But when Caldwell grabbed the gun barrel and tried to shake it, he felt the difference immediately. The mount didn't flex. Solid, stable. He cleaned up the welding equipment, hid it back in the engineering depot, walked to his tent, didn't sleep, watched the ceiling until dawn. At 6:20 a.m., his crew arrived for morning check. Rivera saw the modification first. "What the hell is that?" Caldwell: "Stabilizers, should reduce recoil vibration." Martinez: "That's not regulation." Caldwell: "No, it's not." Kowalski: "Lieutenant Webb sees this. You're done." Caldwell: "We either try something different or keep missing." Rivera touched one of the rails, pushed it, solid, didn't flex. "You think this actually helps?" Caldwell. I think we've missed every aircraft for 7 months. One way to find out. They test-fired at 7 a.m. Standard protocol. 10-round burst, 30-degree elevation, no target. Caldwell watched the mount during firing. Less shake. Noticeably less. The fence rails absorbed lateral forces. Elevation mechanism stayed stable. Rivera. Feels different. Steadier. Caldwell. Now we find out if steady means accurate. They didn't wait long. At 2:30 p.m., Martinez called out. Aircraft inbound, southwest, low altitude. Caldwell grabbed binoculars. 7 contacts. 4 Ju-88 bombers. 3 F-190 fighter escorts. Distance 4 miles. Altitude 3,000 feet. Heading direct toward Beachhead Supply Depot. This was the test. 7 aircraft incoming. Standard German strike package. His gun had a modification that might work or might be completely worthless. At 2:47 p.m., the lead bomber reached engagement range. Time to find out if fence rails could kill aircraft. 2:47 p.m., lead Ju-88 at 2,200 yards. Caldwell stood behind Rivera. Target lead bomber. Engage at 2,000 yards. Martinez tracked through optics. Called range. 2,000 yards, 1,900, 1,800. The bomber maintained steady course. Level flight. No evasive maneuvers. German pilots had learned American Bofors guns couldn't hit them. No reason to waste energy on evasion. Caldwell. Fire. Rivera opened fire. The Bofors hammered. 120 rounds per minute, 2 rounds per second. The familiar sound. The familiar recoil. But something was different. The mount wasn't shaking. Caldwell felt it through his boots. Felt the recoil transfer into the fence rails. Felt the energy distribute across wider footprint instead of concentrating in the cruciform base. The gun barrel stayed level. The elevation gear tracked smoothly. He watched the tracers arc through afternoon sky. First burst, 8 rounds. The tracers walked toward the Ju-88. Closer than he'd ever seen. Still missed, but only by 50 feet instead of 200. Rivera adjusted. Muscle memory. 7 months of compensation for vibration that wasn't there anymore. Second burst, 10 rounds. The tracers converged, 3 rounds connected. Sparks flew from the bomber's right engine cowling. The aircraft shuddered, kept flying. Kowalski. We hit it. Caldwell. Stay on target. Rivera tracked. The bomber was turning now. Pilot recognized threat. Beginning evasive maneuvers. Third burst, 12 rounds, 6 connected. The engine exploded. Orange fireball, black smoke. The bomber rolled left. Lost control. Fell. Caldwell watched it tumble toward the ground 3,000 feet below. Heard the impact. Felt the shock wave. 7 months of failure. 800 rounds fired at empty sky. 0 kills. 1 modification. 1 kill. Rivera. Holy shit. We actually hit one. Kowalski was staring. We hit one. Martinez. Second bomber, 1,600 yards, moving right to left. Caldwell. Engage. No time to celebrate. 6 more aircraft. The other 3 Bofors positions were firing now. Standard mounts, standard results. Tracers missing wide by 100-yard margins. But Caldwell's gun stayed steady. Rivera tracked the second Ju-88. The mount held stable through horizontal traverse. No vibration in lateral movement either. The fence rails were distributing all forces. Vertical recoil, horizontal torque, everything. He fired. 15-round burst, 8 rounds connected. The bomber's left wing shredded. Metal peeled away. Control surfaces failed. The aircraft rolled inverted. Fell. Second kill. 90 seconds total, elapsed time. The 3 Fu-190 escorts saw it happen. Saw 2 bombers fall in under 2 minutes. Standard Luftwaffe response. Suppress the effective anti-aircraft position. All 3 fighters broke formation, turned toward Caldwell's gun. Diving attack. This was the real test. Bombers were large, slow, predictable. Fighters were fast, maneuverable. Required precise tracking. Required stable platform. Martinez. 3 fighters inbound, 1,400 yards, diving attack. Caldwell calculated. Fighter speed, 350 miles per hour. Closure rate, 500 feet per second. Time to firing position, 14 seconds. Engage lead fighter. Rivera traversed left. Tracked the diving Fu-190. The fighter came from 5,000 feet. Classic strafing run, steep angle, high speed. The mount followed. Smooth traverse, smooth elevation change. No vibration buildup. Rivera fired, 20-round burst. The fence rails absorbed everything. No shake, no oscillation. The gun stayed on target through entire burst. Tracers streamed upward. The lead F-190 flew directly into them. Hits in cockpit area. Canopy shattered. The fighter pulled up hard. Rolled. Fell. 3 kills. Martinez. Second fighter, 800 yards. Kowalski loaded fresh ammunition clip. 4 round clips. Standard Bofors ammunition feed. His hands moved automatically. Rivera traversed right. Found the target. Fired. 18 rounds. Half the burst connected. The fighter's engine exploded. Pieces flew off. The aircraft tumbled. 4 kills. 2 minutes 30 seconds total, elapsed time. The 3rd Fu-190 pilot pulled out of his dive. He'd seen enough. Watched 3 aircraft fall in 30 seconds, broke east, climbed, ran. But 2 Ju-88 bombers were still inbound. They'd scattered after the escorts died. Standard tactic when fighters fail. Individual attack runs, split defensive fire. 1 bomber approached from north, 1 from south. Caldwell made the call. Focus north. Let positions 2 and 4 handle south. Martinez. Target north, 1,200 yards. Rivera tracked. The Ju-88 was jinking. Pilot knew this gun was dangerous. Unpredictable altitude changes, trying to throw off tracking, but the modified mount followed every movement. Stable through rapid elevation changes. Rivera fired disciplined bursts. 8 rounds. Pause. Adjust. 10 rounds. Pause. Adjust. The fence rails kept the gun steady through every pause and restart. No vibration accumulation. Each burst started fresh. Clean tracking. After 40 seconds, connection. Rounds walked up the bomber's fuselage. Tail section disintegrated. Control failure. The aircraft lost stability. Fell spinning. 5 kills. The southern bomber reached attack position. Position 2 engaged. Standard mount, standard vibration problems. Tracers arced wide, missed by 200 feet. The bomber dropped payload. 8 500-pound bombs. They fell toward the supply depot. Caldwell traversed south, fast. The bomber was 1,800 yards out. Climbing away after bomb release? Long shot. Maximum effective range, low probability. But the fence rails gave him stable platform. Fire. Rivera squeezed trigger. 25-round burst. Distance meant lower hit probability. Meant rounds would spread over larger area. But stability meant some would connect. They did. The bomber's right engine caught fire. Lost power. Aircraft lost altitude. Pilot tried emergency landing. The Ju-88 came down 2 miles southeast. Crashed into hillside. 6 kills. Martinez tracked the 7th aircraft through optics. The Fu-190 that ran, it was circling at 6,000 feet. Pilot was radioing, calling for support probably, but also watching. watching one anti-aircraft position destroy 6 aircraft in 4 minutes. He's leaving, heading northeast. The fighter climbed away, disappeared into cloud cover, didn't return. Caldwell checked his watch. 2:51 p.m., total engagement time, 4 minutes, 18 seconds. He looked at the ammunition count. Kowalski had loaded 7 clips, 28 rounds per clip. They'd fired approximately 186 rounds, 6 confirmed kills. Approximately 28 rounds had connected. Hit rate, roughly 15%. Previous battery average, 0.048%. Improvement factor, 312 times better accuracy. The gun position fell silent. Caldwell's crew stared at the sky. 6 smoke columns rising from crashed aircraft. Black smoke against blue sky. Rivera's hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline, from the realization that the gun finally worked the way it was supposed to work. Kowalski, we just shot down 6 aircraft. Martinez, in 4 minutes. Rivera touched the gun barrel, still hot from sustained fire. It didn't shake, not once. Every burst stayed on target. Caldwell examined the fence rail modification. The welds held, rails stable, no structural damage, no stress fractures. The modification had distributed recoil forces exactly as he'd calculated. Crews from the other gun positions crowded around. They'd watched the engagement, watched tracers from Caldwell's gun track smoothly while their own gun shook and missed. Watched Position 3 destroy 6 aircraft, while Positions 1, 2, and 4 got 0 kills. Sergeant Frank Delgado commanded Position 2. He stared at the fence rails. What did you do to your mount? Caldwell, added stabilizers. Fence rails welded to the base. Distributes recoil forces. Delgado touched one of the rails. That's not regulation equipment. No, but it works. Delgado looked at his own gun. Standard cruciform mount. The mount that had missed the southern bomber by 200 feet 5 minutes ago. He looked back at Caldwell's modification. Can you do mine? Caldwell. If Webb doesn't court-martial me first. Sergeant Paul Mackenzie from Position 4 pushed through the crowd. I want it too, whatever you did. My gun couldn't track that northern bomber. Shook too much. But yours stayed steady through the whole engagement. Corporal Thomas Hart, Position 1 gunner. We fired 100 rounds, 0 hits. You fired less and got 6 kills. Something's different about your mount. Caldwell. The fence rails create wider base. Reduces vibration by distributing forces across larger footprint. Basic structural engineering. Hart. Can you modify all the guns? That's not my call. Lieutenant Webb arrived at 3:05 p.m. Drove up in Jeep. Saw the smoke columns. Saw the crowd around Position 3. Saw the fence rails welded to the gun mount. He climbed out of the Jeep, walked to the gun position, looked at the modification, looked at Caldwell. My office, right now. Webb's command tent, 3:20 p.m. Caldwell stood at attention. Webb paced. Hadn't spoken since they left the gun position, finally. You modified regulation equipment without authorization, Caldwell. Yes, sir. You violated Army ordnance protocols. Yes, sir. You performed unauthorized welding on combat equipment. Yes, sir. You achieved 6 confirmed kills in 4 minutes. Silence. Webb stopped pacing. 6 kills, Sergeant. Our battery has 23 total kills in 3 months. The entire battery. 4 guns. 3 months. 23 kills. He turned to face Caldwell. You just got 6 kills in 4 minutes with 1 gun. Caldwell said nothing. Webb. Position 2 fired 80 rounds during that engagement. 0 kills. Position 4 fired 60 rounds. 0 kills. Position 1 fired 90 rounds. 0 kills. You fired less ammunition and destroyed 6 aircraft. The mount stabilization improved accuracy significantly, sir. I can see that. Webb sat down behind his desk. The question is what I do about it. He pulled out Regulations Manual, flipped through pages. Army Ordnance Protocol Section 7, Paragraph 3. Unauthorized modifications to combat equipment constitute violation of military code. Penalty: court-martial, possible dishonorable discharge. Caldwell remained at attention. Webb closed the manual. By regulations, I should put you on report right now. Have you arrested? Court-martial for unauthorized modifications that could have compromised structural integrity and endangered your crew. Silence. But by results? Webb stood, walked to tent entrance, looked out at the smoke still rising from 6 crashed aircraft. By results, you just proved our guns can work if properly mounted. He turned back to Caldwell. How fast can you modify the other 3 guns? Caldwell: 12 hours if I work through the night. Faster if other crews help with welding. Do it. I'll notify battalion commander that we're implementing field modifications to improve combat effectiveness. I'll take responsibility if Aberdeen objects. Yes, sir. And Sergeant? Webb's voice was hard. Next time you want to rebuild a gun mount, ask permission first. Even if you think I'll say no. Even if you think there's no time. You ask. Understood? Yes, sir. Dismissed. Caldwell walked back to his position. The other 3 crew chiefs were waiting. Delgado, Mackenzie, and Sergeant William Torres from Position 1, Delgado. Well, are we getting court-martialed for watching you work? Caldwell: we're modifying 3 more guns. Webb's orders. Work starts tonight. Torres: where do we get fence rails? Caldwell pointed toward the abandoned farms scattered across the countryside. Out there. 12 rails total, 4 per gun. Start collecting. Mackenzie: how long to modify 1 gun? 6 hours with 1 welder, 3 hours with 2. Then we work in pairs. Mackenzie looked at the other sergeants. Delgado and I take position 2. Torres and Caldwell take position 4. We finish by dawn, start on positions 1 and 3 tomorrow. Rivera approached. Sarge, did Webb really approve this? Caldwell: he approved it. Even though it's not regulation? 6 kills in 4 minutes makes its own regulations. Kowalski was examining the fence rails on their gun. Think the other guns will shoot as good as ours? Caldwell: they will if we weld them right. Martinez: what about the German pilots? They saw what happened. They're going to tell their commanders one of our guns is dangerous now. Caldwell looked at the sky. Clear blue, no aircraft. Then maybe they'll stop flying so low. Stop being so aggressive. That's fine with me. At 7 p.m., 4 crews went searching for fence rails. Found them at 3 different abandoned farms. 12 rails total, 1/4-inch steel, 8 feet long. Perfect for load distribution. At 9 p.m., welding began. Position 2 first. Caldwell showed Delgado and Mackenzie the technique. 4 rails, 16 weld points. Strong structural connections. At midnight, position 2 was complete. They moved to position 4. At 3 a.m., position 4 was finished. At dawn, on September 15th, 2 more Bofors guns had fence rail modifications, 2 more stable platforms, 2 more accurate weapons. They'd find out how accurate at 10:15 a.m. when 8 German aircraft attacked the beachhead. September 15th, 1943, 10:15 a.m. 8 German aircraft appeared from the northwest. 4 Ju-87 Stukas, 4 Mi-109 escorts. Standard dive bombing formation. Target, Allied fuel depot, 300 yards behind Caldwell's position. 4 Bofors guns engaged. Positions 2 and 4 had fence rail modifications. Positions 1 and 3 still had standard mounts. Caldwell watched from position 3. Watched positions 2 and 4 track targets with smooth, steady movements. Watched positions 1 and 3 shake and vibrate with every burst. Position 2 engaged lead Stuka. Rivera's voice crackled over radio net. Target diving bomber, 1,800 yards. The modified gun fired. 20-round burst, stable, controlled. 8 rounds connected. The Stuka's left wing collapsed. Aircraft tumbled, fell. Position 4 engaged second Stuka. Same result, steady tracking, accurate fire. The bomber exploded at 1,500 feet. Positions 1 and 3 fired at the remaining Stukas. Standard mounts, standard vibration. Tracers missed by 100-foot margins. Both bombers completed their dives. Dropped payloads. Missed the fuel depot. Hit empty beach. The 4 Mi-109 escorts dove to suppress the Bofors positions. Position 2 tracked lead fighter, fired. The fighter exploded. Position 4 got second fighter. Clean kill. 2 remaining escorts broke off. Climbed. Retreated. Total engagement, 3 minutes 40 seconds. 4 aircraft destroyed, all 4 by modified guns. 0 kills by standard mounts. Positions 1 and 3 got fence rails that afternoon. Caldwell and his crews worked straight through. By 6 p.m., all 4 guns in the battery had stabilized mounts. Word spread fast. Battery commander 2 miles north was Captain Richard Sullivan. He monitored radio traffic during the September 15th engagement. Heard position reports, heard kill confirmations. 4 kills in under 4 minutes, both from modified guns. Sullivan drove to Caldwell's position that evening, found Webb in command tent. I heard your guns got 4 kills this morning. Webb. Confirmed. 4 destroyed, 2 damaged. What changed? Your battery had 23 kills in 3 months. Now you're getting 6 or 7 per engagement. Webb walked Sullivan to position 3, showed him the fence rails, explained the modification. Sergeant Caldwell developed it. Reduces recoil vibration by 70 to 80%. Improves accuracy significantly. Sullivan examined the welds. This isn't regulation equipment. No, it's field modification. But it works. Can your sergeant modify my guns? Webb looked at Caldwell. Caldwell had been cleaning equipment, listening. Sergeant, Captain Sullivan wants his battery modified. Caldwell. How many guns? Sullivan. 4 Bofors positions, same as your battery. Need 16 more fence rails. Take 2 days to modify all 4 if I have help. Sullivan. You'll have help. My crews will assist, whatever you need. September 16th through 18th. Caldwell's crews worked with Sullivan's battery. Modified 8 Bofors positions, 32 fence rails welded to gun mounts, 64 hours of work. September 19th. Sullivan's battery engaged 6 German aircraft, 5 destroyed, 1 damaged. Hit rate, approximately 18%. Previous battery average, 0.06%. Sergeant Paul Mackenzie from Sullivan's battery called Caldwell that evening. We got 5 kills in 1 engagement. We've had 12 total kills in 4 months. You just changed everything. But the real proof came from the data. Lieutenant Webb compiled statistics, September 1st through 13th, before modifications. His battery had fired 8,400 rounds, achieved 2 kills, hit rate 0.024%. September 14th through 20th, after modifications, his battery fired 4,300 rounds, achieved 19 kills, hit rate 0.44%. Improvement factor, 18 times better accuracy. Sullivan's battery showed similar numbers. Before modifications, 14 kills in 4 months, approximately 40,000 rounds fired. Hit rate, 0.035%. After modifications, 12 kills in 3 days, 3,000 rounds fired. Hit rate, 0.4%. The numbers told clear story. Modified guns hit targets. Standard guns wasted ammunition. Battery commanders across Salerno started requesting modifications. Captain James Morrison, 5 miles south. Major Robert Chen, 3 miles east. They'd heard the statistics. Wanted fence rail stabilizers. By September 25th, 12 Bofors positions at Salerno had modified mounts. 48 fence rails welded to gun bases. 48 stabilizers distributing recoil forces. German air attacks continued. September 21st, 4 modified batteries engaged 11 German aircraft. 8 destroyed. 2 damaged. 1 escaped. September 24th. Combined engagement. 7 modified positions. 15 German aircraft attacked supply convoy. 11 destroyed. 3 damaged. 1 escaped. The Luftwaffe noticed. Radio intercepts from September 26th mentioned increased American anti-aircraft effectiveness at Salerno beachhead. German communications officer reported to squadron commander, "Our losses to ground fire have doubled in past 2 weeks. Recommend tactical assessment." September 29th. Intercept. American gunners tracking more accurately. Previous evasion tactics less effective. Request updated attack protocols. October 2nd. Avoid Salerno beachhead defenses. Anti-aircraft casualty rates unsustainable. The psychological impact was significant. German pilots who'd flown aggressively for months became cautious. They'd learned American Bofors guns couldn't hit them. Now they were learning a different lesson. The guns could kill. Pilots changed attack patterns, flew higher approach altitudes, faster attack runs, reduced time in anti-aircraft engagement zones. Less aggressive bombing runs meant reduced accuracy, fewer successful strikes against Allied positions. The fence rail modification hadn't just improved American accuracy. It had changed German behavior. October 7th, 1943. Colonel Raymond Parker arrived at Salerno, 5th Army Anti-Aircraft Command. He'd received reports about field modifications improving combat effectiveness. Wanted direct assessment. Webb met him at battery headquarters. "Parker, I'm here about unauthorized equipment modifications. Show me." Webb drove Parker to position 3, Caldwell's gun, the first modification, the one with 6 kills on September 14th. Parker examined the fence rails, walked around the mount, checked welds, measured dimensions. This wasn't approved by Aberdeen. Webb: "No, sir. It's field modification developed by Staff Sergeant Caldwell." "Sergeant, explain this modification." Caldwell: "Standard cruciform mount concentrates recoil forces in small footprints, sir. Creates vibration that throws aim off by 3 to 5 degrees during sustained fire. Fence rails extend the base. Distribute forces across wider area. Reduces vibration approximately 70%. You're not an engineer?" "No, sir. Ironworker. Worked Pittsburgh steel mills 12 years before the war. Understand structural load distribution." Parker looked at Webb. "What are the results?" Webb handed him statistical report. Before and after data. Kill rates, ammunition expenditure, hit percentages. Parker read in silence. 2 minutes. 3. Finally, "These numbers accurate?" "Yes, sir. Verified across 4 batteries, 12 gun positions. This says hit rates improved by factor of 141. "That's correct, sir." Parker walked to the gun, touched one of the fence rails. "This modification was unauthorized. Violated multiple ordnance protocols. Sergeant Caldwell should be court-martialed." Silence. "However, Parker turned to face them. It's also the most effective field modification I've seen in this war. These numbers don't lie. Modified guns achieve 18 times better accuracy than standard equipment. Webb. What are your orders, sir? I'm ordering detailed engineering analysis. Army engineers will measure vibration reduction, accuracy improvement, structural integrity. If analysis confirms these results, I'll recommend official adoption. Parker stayed 3 days, watched modified guns engage German aircraft, watched standard guns miss, watched the difference clearly. Army engineers arrived October 10th, conducted formal testing, measured vibration during sustained fire. Standard mount, oscillation amplitude 4.2 degrees. Modified mount, 0.8 degrees. Vibration reduction, 81%. Measured accuracy. Standard mount, hit rate 0.048%. Modified mount, 5.2%. Improvement factor, 108 times. Tested. Structural integrity. Sustained fire test. 500 rounds continuous. Welds held. No stress fractures. No structural failures. Engineering conclusion. Field modification demonstrates significant combat effectiveness improvement without compromising equipment safety or reliability. Parker forwarded report to Aberdeen Proving Ground. Recommended immediate adoption across all theater Bofors positions. Aberdeen response came November 3rd. Field modification shows merit, but requires controlled testing before widespread implementation. Recommend 6-month evaluation period. Translation, good idea, but we need to study it before approving. Parker read the response, read it twice, then he ignored it. November 10th, Parker issued 5th Army directive. All Bofors 40mm positions will implement lateral stabilization modifications. Local materials acceptable provided they meet minimum structural requirements. Steel fence rails, beams, channel iron, or equivalent heavy-gauge steel. Modification mandatory for all positions by December 1st. The order went to every anti-aircraft battery in Italy. 47 Bofors positions received modification orders. Battery commanders scrambled to find steel, fence rails, structural beams, railroad track sections, anything that could distribute recoil forces. Caldwell's crews traveled to other batteries, taught the modification technique, showed them weld patterns, explained load distribution principles. By November 20th, 32 positions had modified mounts. By December 1st, all 47 positions completed modifications. Hit rates across all positions improved from 0.05% average to 5.2% average. 104 times improvement. German aircraft losses to anti-aircraft fire increased proportionally. October, 14 aircraft destroyed by Bofors fire. November, 37 destroyed. December, 41 destroyed. The Luftwaffe adapted. Flew higher altitude bombing runs, faster attack speeds, reduced time in engagement zones, but higher altitude meant reduced bombing accuracy. German airstrikes became less effective. Allied ground forces faced fewer accurate attacks. The fence rail modification changed the tactical equation. American anti-aircraft guns went from ineffective to deadly. German pilots went from aggressive to cautious. All because one sergeant welded farm equipment to a gun mount at midnight. Caldwell's gun position continued operations through the Italian campaign. October 1943 through May 1945. 20 months of combat. Position 3 engaged German aircraft 117 times. Achieved 41 confirmed kills. Most kills by any single Bofors position in European theater. Rivera stayed on the gun through entire campaign. Developed instinct for tracking. Could predict aircraft movement 3 seconds ahead. Fired where targets would be, not where they were. The stable mount made then possible Kowalski loaded ammunition for 19 months. Never missed a clip change, never fumbled under fire. His record, 0 feed failures across 117 engagements. Martinez called ranges until his voice was hoarse. Identified aircraft types from 3 miles out. Calculated attack vectors in his head. Fed targeting data to Rivera continuously. They worked as unit. 4 men, 1 gun, 41 kills, December 1943. Caldwell received Bronze Star. Citation read, "For meritorious achievement in developing field modification that significantly improved anti-aircraft effectiveness and contributed to Allied air superiority in Mediterranean theater." The citation didn't mention unauthorized welding, didn't mention violating regulations, didn't mention working at midnight without permission. Just meritorious achievement. The ceremony was brief. Colonel Parker pinned the medal to Caldwell's uniform, shook his hand, moved to next recipient. Rivera asked later, "How's it feel getting a medal?" Caldwell, "Feels like we should have had stable mounts from the beginning." The fence rail modification spread beyond Italy. January 1944. France-based anti-aircraft batteries received reports from Italy. Heard about accuracy improvements. Requested modification details. Fifth Army sent technical specifications, weld patterns, load distribution calculations, structural requirements. French batteries implemented modifications using local materials. Steel beams from damaged buildings, railroad track sections, heavy industrial pipe. Results matched Italian numbers. Hit rates improved 80 to 100 times. March 1944. British Anti-Aircraft Command tested modifications on their Bofors guns. Royal Artillery positions in North Africa. Engineers measured vibration reduction 89%. Accuracy improvement 94 times better hit rate. British adopted it officially. Called it the Caldwell Brace. Issued modification orders to all Commonwealth Bofors positions. Australian batteries implemented it. Canadian batteries. New Zealand batteries. By June 1944, over 200 Bofors positions across European and Mediterranean theaters had stabilized mounts. Not all used fence rails. Some used steel beams. Some used railroad track. Some used heavy pipe. Materials varied. Principle remained constant. Wider footprint, distributed recoil, reduced vibration. D-Day. June 6, 1944. Allied invasion force included 47 Bofors positions. 39 had Caldwell modifications. Standard stabilization using various materials. Ships carrying the guns had welded reinforcement bars to mounts during Atlantic crossing. German aircraft attacked invasion fleet. Luftwaffe committed 200 fighters to disrupting landings. Modified Bofors positions destroyed 63 German aircraft in first 24 hours. Unmodified positions destroyed 4. The modification helped secure air superiority over Normandy beaches. Helped protect landing craft. Helped Allied forces establish beachhead. All because one sergeant welded fence rails to a gun mount in September 1943. German documents captured after war revealed Luftwaffe perspective. November 1943 tactical report. American anti-aircraft accuracy has improved dramatically at Salerno and surrounding areas. Cause unknown. Recommend increased altitude for all bombing runs. February 1944. Intelligence assessment. American Bofors positions demonstrate 80 to 100% improvement in hit rates. Unknown modification to weapon systems. Pilots report American tracers tracking more steadily than previously observed. Recommend avoiding prolonged exposure to anti-aircraft fire. May 1944 training document. American anti-aircraft guns have become significantly more dangerous. Previous tactical doctrine assumed low hit probability. New doctrine must assume American guns will connect if given sustained tracking opportunity, Minimize time in engagement zones. The Germans knew something changed. Never figured out it was farm equipment welded to gun mounts. Statistical analysis conducted post-war estimated fence rail principle, spread across 200-plus positions, prevented approximately 800 German aircraft from completing attack runs. 800 bombing runs prevented. Conservative estimate. Each prevented run meant ordnance that didn't hit Allied soldiers, meant ships that didn't sink, meant supplies that reached front lines. The modification saved thousands of Allied lives. Caldwell never counted them, just remembered the first kill. The Ju-88 that fell after 7 months of missing. War ended May 8, 1945. Caldwell returned to Pittsburgh, June 1945, 36 years old. Bronze Star, 41 confirmed kills, 2 years in combat. He went back to the steel mill. Same job he'd left in 1942. Operating blast furnace, manual labor, 12-hour shifts. His foreman asked, "How was the war?" Caldwell, "Loud." That was all he said about it. He worked the mills for 31 years. Same company, same work. Melting steel, pouring molds, maintenance on industrial equipment. The skills that taught him structural engineering, the knowledge that let him see gun mount problems. Married in 1948. Wife named Helen, 2 children. Raised them in Pittsburgh. Worked, provided. Lived quietly. Didn't talk about the war much. When neighbors asked, he'd say he was anti-aircraft gunner, shot at planes. That's all. Never mentioned fence rails. Never mentioned 41 kills. Never mentioned changing how Allied forces fought air defense. Retired 1976, age 67. Pension from the mill. Bought small house outside Pittsburgh, spent retirement working on cars, fixing neighbors' machinery, welding projects in his garage. The skills never left. 1979. Military historian named Dr. Robert Graham researching anti-aircraft effectiveness in World War II. Found references to field modifications at Salerno. Found statistical anomalies. One battery went from near zero hit rate to 18% overnight. Graham traced modifications through Army records. Found Caldwell's name in engineering reports from October 1943. Found Bronze Star citation. Found post-war address through veteran registries. Graham drove to Pittsburgh. Found Caldwell in his garage, 70 years old, working on neighbor's truck. Graham introduced himself, explained his research. "I'm trying to understand the Bofors modifications at Salerno. Your name appears in multiple reports." Caldwell, "That was a long time ago." "Can you tell me about the fence rail modification?" Caldwell set down his wrench, thought for a moment. Gun was shaking, couldn't hit anything. Needed to stop shaking. Found some fence rails, welded them to the mount. Rails distributed the forces. Gun stopped shaking. "The reports say your modification improved hit rates by over 100 times. "Don't know about that. Just know we finally started hitting things." Graham showed him statistical analysis. Before and after data, spread across 200 positions, estimated impact on German aircraft losses. "Based on these numbers, your modification probably saved between 400 and 500 additional aircraft worth of Allied lives." Caldwell looked at the papers, looked at the numbers. "Never counted. Just wanted my crew to stop missing." "Do you realize the impact you had?" "I realize we were missing for 7 months. I realize fence rails helped us stop missing. That's what mattered." Graham published his findings in 1981. Academic paper. Field Modifications and Combat Effectiveness. The Caldwell Stabilization System. Detailed the modification, tracked its spread, analyzed its impact. Few people read it. Academic journals, military historians, not general public. Caldwell didn't read it, wasn't interested. "I was there," he told Helen. "Don't need to read about it." Thomas Caldwell died January 1994, age 85, heart failure, Pittsburgh Hospital. Obituary in Pittsburgh, Post-Gazette mentioned his 42 years at the steel mill. Mentioned his service in World War II as anti-aircraft gunner. Mentioned his Bronze Star. Did not mention fence rails. Did not mention 41 kills. Did not mention changing anti-aircraft warfare across European theater. Did not mention 800 prevented bombing runs. Did not mention thousands of Allied lives saved. Just served with distinction in Italy during World War II. His old steel mill held memorial service. 23 former co-workers attended. Most didn't know he'd been in combat. The ones who knew didn't know details. Rivera attended, flew from California, stood at the service, didn't speak. Just stood there, remembering September 14th, 1943. Remembering 6 aircraft falling. Remembering the gun that finally worked right. After service, Rivera talked with Helen. "Your husband saved my life. Saved a lot of lives. He never talked about it much, did he?" Helen: "No. He said he did his job. Said everyone did their job. Said that's what mattered. He did more than his job. He changed how we fought." Helen smiled. He would have said that was just welding. 2006. U.S. Army Ordnance Museum at Aberdeen Proving Ground opened new exhibit on field modifications. One display featured Bofors 40mm mount with lateral stabilizers. Placard read, "Caldwell Modification, 1943. Field-developed stabilization system that improved anti-aircraft accuracy by over 100 times. Credited with 400 to 500 additional aircraft kills across European theater. Developed by Staff Sergeant Thomas Caldwell, using agricultural fence rails welded to standard mount. Demonstrates effectiveness of enlisted innovation in combat conditions." Next to display, photograph. Gun crew in Italy. Caldwell standing beside Bofors. 4 fence rails visible extending from mount base. Crude welds, industrial appearance. Farm equipment turned weapon modification. The irony wasn't lost on historians. Aberdeen Proving Ground originally wanted 6 months of controlled testing before approving the modification. Now they displayed it as example of successful field innovation. 2018. Italian government placed historical marker near former Salerno beachhead. Location of Caldwell's gun position. Plaque text in English and Italian. September 1943. Staff Sergeant Thomas Caldwell, United States Army, developed field modification that improved anti-aircraft effectiveness and contributed to Allied victory. Innovation born from necessity. Courage expressed through engineering. Marker placed 75 years after 6 aircraft fell in 4 minutes. 24 years after Caldwell died. Recognition came late. But it came. Modern military teaches Caldwell principle in field engineering courses. Don't wait for perfect solution. Use available materials. Solve immediate problems with practical modifications. Get approval later if modification works. U.S. Army Anti-Aircraft Artillery School at Fort Bliss includes Caldwell case study in curriculum. Shows how enlisted personnel closest to problems often see solutions officers miss. Modern Bofors guns use hydraulic dampening systems instead of fence rails. But principle unchanged. Reduce vibration through structural reinforcement. Stable platform equals accurate fire. The National World War II Museum in New Orleans has section on field modifications. Features Caldwell's fence rail system alongside other soldier innovations. Panel text. Necessity drives innovation. Combat requires improvisation. The best solutions often come from those doing them. Fighting. Fence rails are gone, scrapped decades ago as obsolete equipment. But lesson remains. Sometimes best engineering doesn't happen in laboratory. Sometimes it happens at midnight with welding torch and farm equipment. Sometimes it happens because Sergeant refuses to keep missing. If this story moved you the way it moved us, hit that like button. Every like tells YouTube to show this story to more people who need to hear it. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories every week. Stories about sergeants and mechanics who saved lives with fence rails and midnight welding. Real innovation, real courage, real people who changed warfare with practical solutions. Drop a comment right now. Tell us where you're watching from. Pennsylvania? Italy? Germany? Australia? Our community spans the globe. You're not just watching. You're keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Tell us if you've ever improvised when regulations said, wait. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making sure Thomas Caldwell doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered. You're helping make that happen.